Consider this a prophecy, a prediction of the future. Trump has recently deployed the National Guard and federalized the local police in the bluest city in the country, Washington, D.C. Today I will answer the question of why. What is the long-term goal or outcome the Trump administration is gunning for? Spoiler alert, it has nothing to do with the stated reasons like being tough on crime. Let's back up for a second. In June of this year, in response to increased ICE presence in the city, LA played host to the largest protest seen since 2020. There's a saying in politics, never let a good crisis go to waste. So of course, the next logical step was to treat the whole thing as a riot on similar scales to the Black Lives Matter protests. Even though no one was injured, and the worst thing the participants did was set a couple of cars on fire. In fact, the only people harmed during the whole weekend were one protester in Utah, who was killed by a right-wing terrorist, and two Democratic politicians in Michigan, who were assassinated by another right-wing terrorist. It's almost like the right-wing terrorism is a greater threat to the peace and safety of this country than Antifa or criminal illegal aliens. But I digress. A state of emergency was declared, the National Guard was mobilized, and in an unprecedented move, 400 Marines were deployed as well. I should note that deploying the National Guard is legal for the president to do, as long as he has permission from the governor. Oh, shit. And as far as I am aware, there is no law in the books that allows the president to deploy federal troops to undertake police duties. So it's no coincidence then that the 400 Marines spent their time in LA standing around the federal courthouse and sitting on their asses. Easy money. Unless martial law is declared, Posse Comitatus means all military personnel are little more than glorified scarecrows. Now we come to this week's events. The president does have the power to federalize the police in Washington, D.C., and only in Washington, D.C. But the reasons given for doing so are dubious, to say the least. First of all, every crime statistic in D.C. has been declining for the past couple of years. A high-profile case in which the former Doge employee Big Balls was assaulted by two teenage girls is being used as anecdotal evidence that violent crime is rampant. Wow, I lost brain cells reading that sentence. Secondly, how exactly does federalizing police make them more responsive to crime? Is there some sort of magical switch that gets flipped and causes the police to be far more efficient just by having them answer to Pam Bondi instead of Mayor Bowser? Somehow, I doubt it. Every day that passes, another video of the police setting up checkpoints or harassing some dude smoking a cigarette on his porch comes out. But again, this decreases crime how exactly? LA and DC were the trial runs. Next, they will take it national. New York, Chicago, Baltimore, San Francisco, and Seattle will all see National Guard units deployed in the streets. The legality be damned. This is all for the purpose of spreading fear and distrust. A masked armed soldier on every street corner is a great reminder that your freedoms are nothing more than temporary privileges that the state can and will take away on a whim. They wipe their ass with the Constitution and call it patriotism. But again, these troops can't do much except stand there, menacingly, which is where the next phase comes in. Tension in cities across America will continue to rise. Protests will become larger and more frequent. Statistically, at some point, someone's going to take a shot at one of these federal officials. Then the real crackdown begins. Martial law will be declared in all major population centers. Now all of those troops aren't just for show. Public gatherings will be banned. Hell, it wouldn't surprise me if Trump accuses Democrat politicians of encouraging the violence and either arrests members of the federal government or outright declares the Democrat Party a terrorist organization. Of course, this will only lead to more violent protests, which will in turn be used as post hoc justification for the initial deployment of troops and crackdowns by the police. A positive feedback loop of Molotov cocktails and tear gas will be born, with no way to stop the bloodshed from spiraling out of control. From here, it's anyone's guess what will happen. A full-blown civil war, the birth of a totalitarian police state, or a coup against the Trump regime are all possible outcomes. There are only two ways I can see of avoiding this prophecy. The first is the National Democrats growing a spine before it's too late. Yeah, fat chance of that happening. You can watch my most recent Why Trump Won for my further thoughts on that subject. Otherwise, all we can hope for is the court system ruling Trump's declaration of national emergencies or his use of federal troops illegal. While there are currently lawsuits making their way through the legal system, and local or circuit courts may rule against the administration, the conservative majority on the Supreme Court will probably make any legal challenges futile. There are two key takeaways I want you to take from this video. First, if you support Trump right now, you're probably thinking of something like, "What a hack! The deployment of troops is necessary to restore law and order. People who take the side of criminals are un-American. Once the streets are safe again, the troops will go home and everything will go back to normal. Stop the fear-mongering!" To those people, I have a homework assignment for you. Open a history book and find an example of a functional democracy deploying the army to police civilians that does not end in a mass casualty event. The genie cannot be put back into the bottle. Hell, according to the Trump administration themselves, the number of illegal border crossings is down to 0. But have all the troops deployed to the southern border received the order to pack it up and go home? And you can say, they are there as a defense against further crossings. And that, right there, is the point. There will always be an excuse to extend the crisis, no matter the reality on the ground. The emergency cannot be allowed to end. Once the use of military personnel is normalized and institutionalized, it is impossible to change course. Second, and I know some of you don't want to hear this, but all of us need to keep our protesting as peaceful as possible. No looting, no violence. Do not give them the excuse to escalate. We are in a Cold War, and the first side to shoot loses. Let the media news cycle be dominated with videos of police cracking skulls, not businesses set ablaze. And yes, it will be painful, people will get hurt, there may even be fatalities. But in this case, having the moral high ground does matter. There must be a naked overreach of authority beyond what the majority of Americans believe the federal government should possess. The best example we could ask for would be seeing the bright red blood of average citizens on everyone's Facebook feed. Let's now return to the original question. Why is all of this happening? There is a larger conversation to be had about how fascism has percolated into the Trump administration. But I think there is a more practical answer that goes beyond ideological considerations. Republicans know that once you strip away all of the culture war nonsense and the Red Scare hoopla over socialism, their policies are fundamentally unpopular. The public now disapproves of Trump's handling of every major issue. If things continue in this manner, your average Republican politician knows they will be slaughtered in the midterms. In order to prevent the loss of their majority in Congress, some, shall we say, creative strategies must be implemented. We are currently seeing this play out with the redistricting efforts in Texas. But the ultimate prize would be making any sort of opposition to the current administration illegal. Then they could act with impunity, without concern for the will of the people they ostensibly represent.